Okay, everyone, we are starting. I want to welcome everyone to Courageous Conversations. And I see more people are joining us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Arlene. And okay, here we go. So my name is Lori Rubenstein, and I'm a mediator, a coach, a retreat leader, an author, and most importantly, a Grammy. And I want to welcome you to this free monthly community where we will meet to connect and share ideas and thoughts about important issues of our lives. And hoping that this will be a really safe and respectful conversation that we'll have. Today we're going to talk about aging and some fears that are associated with that. And I'm really excited because I'm really hoping we're going to do some great myth busting while we do this. And I want to introduce my dear mother-in-law, Sandy Mauck, who was a coach and a trainer for years before the world knew what coaching was. A number of years ago, she created Lives Third Trimester, blogging about life experience of those 60 and over and older. And she was running a meetup discussion group, and she continues to do personal coaching. She's currently compiling a book called Life's Third Trimester. So welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Lori. That was lovely. Nice to be here. This is so much fun. I love it.
I'm so excited.
This is the wave of the future. How we're all going to talk to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we get started, I just want to go over some class guidelines because I think this is really important. I want everyone to know that, you know, I always recommend confidentiality whenever we have groups, but the truth is this video is going to be shared. So if you don't want to share, you don't have to share. And also I would say you don't have to use your last name. You know, just be comfortable sharing what you can. We would like to hold a safe space for everybody to grow, heal, and learn. And we do that really through showing respect and suspending judgment. How do you suspend judgment? I mean, that's sort of a hard thing sometimes. And we do that from really listening from our compassionate heart, not from our head. And so in that vein, one of the things you can do right now is put your hand to your heart and take a deep breath and just connect from that place to all of us listening today and all of us who will be listening to this video in the future. This also shows up as no right, wrong thinking, no shaming others, noticing common grounds, and that we're all different, right? We're all different and we have different approaches to things. And if we really learn to appreciate that about each other, we can also be open then to learning about how to do things in a different way. And also sharing a safe space is having empathy and not fixing or giving advice without a request. So it's really about giving yourself the time and space to be present here. And of course, we're doing that through letting go of multitasking and, you know, things like that. So I want to thank you for just listening to that because I think it's really important. Are there any questions about that, about the guidelines for the class? Okay, so what I want to do is no longer share, and I have to figure that out. I'm going to do this. Okay, so here we are. Let me, I'm going to go to speaker view. So what that means is when somebody's speaking, they're going to show up, and you can see that on the screen. So let's see. I'm going to I'm going to try one more thing. I'm sorry, everybody, that this is a little crazy. So, okay, so Sandy, I want you to really start, if you could, telling us why you created Life's Third Trimester and why you think it's important for people to be talking about issues around aging.
Okay. So obviously it came out of myself, my own experiences. When I turned 60, I was still working full-time. I was very active. I was living in Chicago. I had a professional counseling job. And my partner at the time decided it was time for us to leave the big city and go to Arizona. And so we just pulled up stakes and went, and it was an entire turnaround of our lives. I had expected, and I had turned 61 maybe around that time, and I had expected that I would do more coaching, I'd run workshops, I'd have all kinds, you know, I just was going to start a new life in Arizona. It didn't happen. And what began to happen was that as I became more introspective, I actually wasn't as externally, committed or driven. And I started looking at that for myself, and that's the beginning of the whole thing. What I did was I started a blog, actually, so that I could write, because I do like to journal and write. And I started the blog. And then eventually that worked into a meetup group, which was hugely successful. I had a great experience with that. But mostly it was because I noticed that there were so many negative images of people turning 60 or retiring or getting older. And then those really old people, the ones, you know, in their 70s or 80s, everybody just forgets about them, puts them over a corner. Right. So I wanted that to change in my lifetime. And I'm beginning to see it happen.
Yeah,
and that's why I started.
Yeah, I always really loved that idea of looking at Life's Third Trimester as something that is not something to fear, but something to embrace. And for me, you've always been such a role model to both me and my husband, because we're like, okay, this is what aging well looks like, you know, and this is how to have a positive attitude. And we see so many grumpy people out there who are like, poor me, and this hurts and that hurts. And there's a vision of getting old that the vision, there's all these negative connotations. And that's why I wanted to do this, was to change those negative connotations.
Absolutely. And actually there's some compassion with those negative connotations. Because as I look back on my life, you know, when I was a child, people really were old in their 60s. And many, many people were old in their 60s. And that was a normal thing. And our society went through such a huge transformation. Everyone knows about that, you know, in the 70s and then beyond, that all those images started changing for people, but the habits didn't. So people habitually still looked at old the way I used to look at my grandma. Right. And I knew in my own heart and in my own body that that wasn't true. And also with my friends, I could see that wasn't true. So I wanted to talk about it. And I made the commitment when I did the meetup group that we weren't going to talk about health, diminishment, bad things like that. Like usually that's what aging is all about. Your cognitive impairment, your physical decline, da, 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 da. And I absolutely made a commitment not to do it that way.
Right. So, you know, when we were preparing for this, one of the things I did is I went on my Facebook group and I asked people questions about what do they fear most about getting old. And I wanted to go over some of those questions that were like the big ones, you know, that numerous people talked about. And one of the big issues was, you know, either being a burden on other people or, you know, getting sick, being alone, not being able to take care of themselves, and being a burden. And one of the things I know you and I talked about was wanting to turn things around for people, allowing people to see a different perspective around that. So if I said to you, I'm really scared because my back is really hurting and I'm going to maybe need a cane. I'm scared that I might need a cane or a walker or something like that. And I don't know how I'm going to get around. And if I'm alone, it's going to be even more scary. What would you say about that?
Well, that's one of those kind of aging decline questions. For me, what I would say is that you're the one who makes your life up. You're the one who creates or doesn't create what it is that's good for you. So keep looking inside, or keep looking at the things that you're happy about. And rather than looking at the loss, which might be some mobility or even some cognitive impairment, I'm not sure. But, don't concentrate on that. Just take care of it. Get your cane, get your helper, do what you need to do to change your life so that you can continue to live. That's really the most important thing. It doesn't matter what our physical body is doing, although we have to take care of that. But who we are is what's way more important. So who we are doesn't change as much like our body changes, or it doesn't decline in the same way our body changes. Our body may decline, but who we are expands during this time. So it doesn't matter if you're walking with a cane. It doesn't matter if you're even in a wheelchair. Your soul and your spirit is still evolving.
Right.
That's all I have to say about that. And I really think that's way more important. You have to take care of the physical, but the spirit and the life that you have is available and in abundance, especially as you age. It's
and
an
why is
incredible
that?
experience.
It sounds like you're saying it's more it's more expensive as you age.
Yes, it is.
Why is that, and how is that?
Well, if you look at what I talked about, this is the third trimester. So you have to go back and look at the first and second trimester. Okay. And all those trimesters have their purpose, and one doesn't make the other bad. It's just what it is. So let's just look for a minute at that second trimester. And if you think about the second trimester, we're talking about 30s, 40s, and 50s. And you just reflect for a while, what was the primary thing? It was actions, doing, becoming, creating. I mean, it was a very productive trimester for almost all of us, okay? So that has its purpose. So if you look at the younger trimester, 0 to 30, well, that's your growing and becoming trimesters. That's really a lot of change in a short period of time. From 0 to 30, my gosh, think about adolescence, childhood, and then being 30. I mean, that's a huge trimester.
Right. I never thought of that, actually.
They're all different. And why wouldn't the third trimester be different too? And I think the third trimester is a place where we expand. I'd say it spiritually, but other people would say it another way, in our personal growth or who we are as a person rather than what we do. So it's a being generation.
Being. I'm curious, does anybody else want to chime in on that idea of, or have you even thought about the concept of, 0 to 30, 30 to 60, and that 60 to 90 could be as great as those other trimesters in terms of how we
all the time.
You do?
I talk now?
Yes.
I think about it all the time. I just retired at the end of last year, and it was a struggle to retire to get me there. But once I did, I have this whole new world that has opened up for me.
Yeah.
And it couldn't happen in 30 to 60. I wasn't ready.
No.
I wasn't financially ready. But now, fortunately, at 69 now, until whenever, I have a whole new outlook on what my life is going to be from here on in. And I'm creating it to be exciting. We can choose it to be exciting or scary or die, you know, we're going to die soon or whatever, but I'm choosing to make it as exciting part of my life as any other part of my life. In fact, there are times I go, this is the best part of my life. Of course, I wish I was a Grammy. What?
Right.
I'm sorry. So I wish I was a Grammy too, but that hasn't happened yet, but I'm looking forward to that happening. But yeah, there's just so many possibilities still. And yes, my body is aging. Things are changing. And what I have regretted to hear from other people as I was as a chiropractor practicing, having people say, I can't anymore. Don't travel anymore. I don't know how long I'll be able to do this or that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I am not saying that about myself. You know, I'm not going.
All right, I've lost it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I lost my video. I'm sorry. But I can still.
That's okay. We can still see you actually. So
okay. I'm just going to leave it where it is. That's a perfect description of what I'm trying to talk to people about. Here's the most important thing, though. It's not like, oh, the second trimester wasn't as good as what this trimester is. There's no value judgments in this. I think it's a very natural way that our human beingness occurs. And there, you know, our cultural bias is to compare. This is better than that. I want this, I don't want that. But it's all good. It's all good. And it doesn't stop. And that's the beauty of the third trimester. It really doesn't stop. By the way, everybody asks me, what happens after the third trimester? What if you live to be 90, you know? And I always say, well, that's called extraordinary, ordinary people. One day I'll write a book about that too. And I just turned 78 this year, you guys, and it really is a beautiful time in my life. I'm very, very happy now.
Yay. Very,
very happy. And I never stop. I mean, it's like maybe some of my physical stops, but other stuff doesn't stop.
Right
I
on.
can talk about it all day, as you can see.
Right on.
That's so great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sandy, you look amazing for 78, I have to say.
Well, it's the blonde hair.
I like how you throw it back.
I have a Leo mane. That's all it is. It's just happenstance. Thank you. But you know, that's another comment that a lot of people make. Oh, you look great for your age. Like when you're old, you're not supposed to look good. This is ridiculous. Our values, judgments have got to change in this country. And one of them has to do with physicality, you know. Now, when you're 20 years old, that's all you think about. But when you're 60, 70, you can think about other things. You don't have to be the most beautiful person in the world. Mm-hmm. And one doesn't make another person better. And I learned that from being pretty. Really. So you guys just allow yourself to be, and that's the best thing that can happen because it's the natural progression. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I'm very passionate about this. I know for a fact in my own life that whatever it was I thought old was wrong.
Right.
So go and just find out what it is for you and forget about all those patterns.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it doesn't have anything to do with the way you look unless you're really unhealthy. Keep your body healthy and you'll look great.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, another thing that people were really talking about, another concern that they had was that they were really stressed out about the political uncertainty of this future, of this country, and environmental issues, and will there be anything left for the children and the future generations? Like, so, I mean, that was actually number one in the list of what people were afraid of. And it's interesting because it's something that we can't really control, but it was such a fear that people had of the future. And I think that's because people are starting to think about, at this point, what is the legacy? What are we leaving? You know, are we leaving this big giant debt, you know, on our kids' shoulders? Are we leaving, you know, an environmentally polluted world? What are we doing? And how do we deal with that? Like, even like just in our hearts, how do we deal with that fear as we get older?
I have a lot to say about that, but I don't know if this is the time to say it. But I have a lot to say about that particular topic you just said.
Well, I think we're here to hear what you have to say about it, and
Okay.
maybe you can make it.
I have noticed the same thing, obviously. I mean, I live in this world in this time. Yeah, but one thing that I have noticed is that all those macro issues that we're all concerned about, and I'm one of them, of course, actually lives within the micro of our own lives. And so if I can begin, and I know this is a very, not everybody's going to accept this. If I can begin to clean up my own backyard, then I'm adding that kind of positive energy into the universe. And that will help make change as much as any kind of like protest or action or worrying will do. Now, how that happens without, you know, actually getting in there and taking action. But if you get older, you're actually in a really good place to be, I don't want to call it contemplative, but I do want to call it focused on what's really important in how you treat people, how you are with yourself, you know, all of those things. And you begin to see, I have lots of prejudice, but if I'm learning and being with myself and changing that, I think I'm going to have an effect out into the world as well. And so I'm doing that. And I do look for the positive rather than the negative, but I don't deny the negative. And I think it's a really much bigger topic.
It is. I mean, I think we could have an entire conversation just about that. But it is the kind of thing that I know my husband always says to me too, you know, concentrate on what you can change. And
exactly.
Because it's crazy making. I mean, if we look at everything that's happening in the world and we have a sense of panic about it, like, oh, it has to be fixed before before we die or something. You know, the reality is that's not going to happen. But it is good, I think, to pick one or two things that we can actually concentrate on and do our piece, our little bit with that.
Yes, and I'd encourage you to also look at the things you don't like out there and see where the micro is within you in a proportionate way. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a list of that. I haven't worked on it or anything, but I do know that there is within me some of the same things that I see externally that I don't like.
So funny.
I live in a retirement community. There aren't very many people of color here.
What did you say? I didn't get that word. There aren't very many people what?
Of color. Color.
Okay.
So one of the things that I realize is that in my own life, I'm not reaching out, you know, to help with the diversity that I want to see in the world. Right. So this is a longer conversation for another topic, I think. But I'm very animate about it. I really believe that when we're old, we actually have the ability to start honing our skill with what it is we want the world to see. And we don't have to do it some of the external. And I don't even know if that makes sense to anybody, but it makes sense to me.
Right.
But don't do it. You know, if you're in your 40s or 50s, it's a whole other ballgame. That's all.
Right. Any other comments from anyone else online? about that? Anything else you want to share? Any other ideas?
I think for me, like I was telling you today, Lori, that when I feel helpless or hopeless, then I have to do something active.
Yeah.
So I've now started doing that, sending postcards, making phone calls politically, things like that, instead of sitting there and going, that kind of thing. I have to do something. And I recently audiobooked The Book of Joy with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu speaking.
Right.
And they were so much, the best thing you can do if you feel down or frightened or anything is to go help someone else or to serve. And so that made a lot of impact on me. So that's what I'm doing.
Nice.
Yeah, we live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of retired people as well. And so many of the people here, I think, just, sit at home and they watch television. And I just think that there's so much wasted capital. There's so many things that these people could be doing. And for whatever reason, a lot of people just don't have the mentality that they can go out and do things. They think they're supposed to be home and watching golf or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a shame too, because I think that there's so much wisdom, and that's another reason why I want to do this, is to really pass on wisdom from older people to younger people. I mean, if this goes out there in the world, there are some things that people can really take from this, and that's definitely a legacy, a passion of mine. One of the things, when we started talking about slowing down, and Sandy, you and I talked about this, was the concept that activities no longer define us, and what we do doesn't define us. It's more like who we be in the world. Any comments about that?
Are you asking me or are you asking everyone?
Yeah. I'm asking you.
Oh, well, that's the crux of all that I've been doing, actually. I think our beingness expands and expands and expands as we become older, or at least the possibility of it does. People are sitting home watching TV, maybe not so much, but you have to embrace it. I don't know how to respond to that exactly. So ask your question again.
Well, the idea of moving from activities or what we do, defining us, to, something that's bigger and greater than what we do. I mean, I think I've always understood that what we do is about ego, and then who we be in the world. And what you were talking about before is what can we do for others, and, giving back to other people. That's a greater definition, I think, than who we, what our profession is.
Okay, so here's what's going on with me, all right? I think that everything that we do in our good time is what we should be doing. So there's nothing wrong with the doing years.
Right.
Certainly the 50s are very major doing years. It's glorious, it's wonderful, and well, it should be. So I thought too, I had to do old age. I had to figure out how to do it. I had to set goals. I had to take actions. All the stuff I had learned in my second trimester. It's not true. What I found out is that there is a very real evolution of the person as we enter older age. That is natural, and it just emerges. We don't have to do anything. It's who we are. And so all these other things can be fallen away as long as we have economic security, of course. But that's what I found out. There's nothing to do, you guys, other than what you need to do now. And then later, it will happen. It's who we are. You will become that beautiful older person that you think maybe, you know, that you want to be now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to. It'll be there. It'll just like, it'll be like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. You know, it really does happen. That's what my experience has been. And as long as I continue to feed my beingness, that I'm not out, you know, trying to do things or diminishing my activity level. I'm moderating my activity level, but I still am very active. I just, it's different. I don't know how to explain it. It's just wait and see.
You know, you said something, we were talking, I don't know if it was last week but you just mentioned it now about moderating your activity level. And
yes.
And I always thought that was really interesting.
Yes, I know what that is. What the funnest thing, okay, the way that I like to explain it is, it's like the difference between driving in a car and looking at the landscape, zipping by, okay, which is fine, and you can see all kinds of things. Or riding a bicycle along the same road and seeing the landscape and a little closer to it and not going so fast, or walking. When you change your perspective, you see things differently. So when you slow down in older age, you begin to see things differently. Your perceptions change. And that's all it is. It's all it is, really. I mean, nothing is better or worse. It's just a change of perception. And you don't have to make it happen. As long as you're taking care of your body, as long as you're really being good to people and good to yourself, it will happen naturally. That's been my experience. And I was a doer, you guys. I mean, I was a manager. I was, I had huge professional careers. This is different. And it happens naturally for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you slow physically, your perception changes. And it's a natural occurrence. I think that's the best way to say it.
Lori?
Yeah, Dorothy?
You know what I've noticed since I moved into this home and I got away from all of my activity in Sedona,
Mm-hmm.
that my whole perspective shifted greatly into an internal process of figuring out, how do I want to live the rest of my life? And I started moving away from my pet sitting, which would have me on the road all the time, and doing more introspective work with the astrology and really focusing on learning deeply about something that inspired me throughout my life. And so that has been a natural occurrence for me.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree with you, Sandy. I just think, what you said is brilliant. And it's certainly been that way for me. And while I was in Michigan, I was surrounded by all these young people in their mid-20s. And I actually was having a grand time with a couple of the bridesmaids. And, here I was hanging out at the reception with the maid of honor and thinking, God, I'm 40 years older than her, and this is so much fun. Just seeing life through her eyes and sharing a little bit of my wisdom with her. And she was really receptive to what I had to say. And it was just fun. So I think, this is a pretty promising time. But that word legacy has come up like 3 times in the last day.
That's my first chapter in my book, What's Your Legacy?
Oh, that's
and it actually addresses what you're talking about. It's not like, how much money you're going to leave, what are you going to do with the house, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. It's actually exactly what you just described. That's perfect. Congratulations.
Yeah,
your transition is beautiful.
Yeah, it's been,
And it's exciting, isn't it fun?
It really is, and I feel very at peace in this house. And so I think my my exterior activities have been more focused within and searching for that part of myself that I was neglected for because I was too busy.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, Arlene, I know you're on mute. I'm just wondering if you have anything that you'd like to say.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute myself. I had got home late and I was eating dinner. That's why I don't have the video on.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting. I'm 63, just turned 63 recently. And I have a number of friends who are in their late 70s and 80s. And getting to know them and seeing all the activity that they're involved in and how they're living their life over the, has really changed my perspective too on what it means to age, and seeing people who are really alive and involved in a lot of different things. Yeah, there's some physical changes with some of them, but regardless of that, they're still very active. And it's been inspiration and kind of given me hope, I guess. And I'm still working. I'm not in a place where I can retire financially, but I'm looking forward to, I'm thinking more and more along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're attracted to it, and you see that it's not such a bad thing to do. That whole thing about activity is interesting because you can actually pick and choose. You kind of had to stay on a path during your second trimester, the second trimester. You kind of had to keep going forward, and you're kind of on a path with a goal. But now you can choose. You can do this for a while, and then you can do that for a while, and it's really way more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
So the doingness doesn't go away, but the level of importance that we give it and the balance of our beingness changes. Very much so.
Right. One of, another big concern, and I'm going to say this is the last big concern that the group had, because there were so many concerns, but there were really three main big ones. And the other one is really about finances and security and, can I retire? Should I retire? And then once I retire, will my money last? What about my standard of living? And, how do I sort of set this up? And there's a lot of fear around this. And I think people end up working longer than they want to because of the fear around money. And I know, Sandy, you've overcome a lot in this area. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's a long conversation. It's one of those things that really, most people who are my age say the same thing. They say, I don't know what I was so afraid of. Everything worked out fine.
Right.
Now, I know that the economic situation in the world has been changing since I retired even. So there is some of that. I just, go to the professionals, let them handle that stuff. And the fact is, get your things in order, and really, it's too big a conversation for one answer. But I will say this, for me, I have always found that no matter what I do, I'm taken care of. And that's a little spiritual, it's a little woo-woo, but I swear to God, the money always shows up if I need it.
Right.
And
even though it's spiritual and woo-woo, it's true, right? I mean, it's actually true. And I see this with people throughout years of coaching, that I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And it always happens. And most people really don't end up being bag ladies or bag men on the street.
I used to have that fear when I was at the height of my career. Many times I had the fear of being a bag lady underneath the freeway. Honest. I mean, It was a true fear. And I don't know what that is. I think it's a cover up for just other things. I think it's just some place for us to put our anxiety about things. It's a bigger question than what I think we can handle here, but I'll put it in my book. I'll tell you. Absolutely. It's a big question, but it's, as long as you tend to yourself and you tend to I don't know how to say it. You're honest, and you do the best you can. Usually things work out pretty well.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say don't worry about it, but worry about it and take care of it. No, don't dwell on it. Don't let it stop you. Don't ever let it stop you. You're unstoppable. Each one of us as a human being is unstoppable. We're marvelous, marvelous entities. And I'm very, very grateful that I've had my time on Earth. Believe me.
Yeah. Amen. How about any of you? Have you had, how do you deal with, have you had the fear around finances and the third trimester, and how have you dealt with it?
I can definitely speak to that. And I'm single, been divorced for about almost 20 years, and I've been an independent contractor for 20 plus years. And because of that, the idea of having to rely just on Social Security and what I've saved is kind of frightening. And I think one of the biggest things is health insurance. Right now, my health insurance costs me $800 a month, and that's just for me. And so that piece, that financial piece is, it's a concern.
And
it's also an unknown. Yeah,
go ahead.
It's also an unknown, because right now your life is very different than it will be when you retire. And so you have no idea what it's going to be like. And I understand that, but you're planning. I don't have advice for you, because I don't do that kind of thing. But I do know that if you go to people with advice and you take care of the nitty gritties, other things will start to fall into place.
Right. I do work with the financial.
But you do have to do your own.
Like that. But it's something that
Good.
I think you have to kind of take care of. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I look at the fear factor, because I get into those moments of fear about it, and then I release the fear. And when I release the fear, it just doesn't, and I'm doing that more and more, just letting go. Okay, that's the fear again. That's the ego stuff. That's the I'm limited. There'll never be enough. And I just change it. And I'm also listening several days a week to some affirmation kind of things, and just plugging that into my being instead of the negative. And I want to live within my means. I want to be realistic. But I know for me, just like you, Sandy, whenever I have a need, it's there. I'm always taken care of.
As long as you're doing what you're doing, which has to do with being conscious. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of times I would talk about this 10, 15 years ago. Sometimes I talk about this. And people would say to me, oh, you're airy-fairy, and you're way too Pollyanna, and there's bad things that happen to good people all the time. Well, myself, but I wasn't, I don't know how to explain it. What you said, I think, was very, very well said. And I think that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be more balanced in our beingness and our doingness.
Mm-hmm. Another part of that, though, is listening to other people. You say, oh, you have to have $1 million to retire. You have to have all this money to retire. Well, how many people is that realistic for? To have all this money saved and da-da-da-da-da. That's the minority. That's not the majority. And the majority of people can live on what they have and not listen to that other garble. Or Medicare will be gone, or Social Security will be gone. I don't believe, eventually it may run out, but then there will be some other way. But I think at this age, for us in our third trimester now, don't let that be a concern. They're not going to wipe it out. It's all that stuff that they put in to make us afraid. So I choose not to go there.
Beautiful. Beautifully said.
You know, I could comment on that. When I retired, I was very young. And I had a friend that was very concerned about me. And he said, now, are you sure you're going to have enough money to live on, you know, after you leave your work? And I said, you know, to be honest with you, I just really don't care. I think I just want to go have some fun. I'm tired of doing what I've been doing, and I want to move around and just see where I belong. And surprisingly, the universe has provided for me. And I might be scraping by at the end of the month and think, oh, crap, I really shouldn't go out to lunch with these girls, but you know, I think I'm just going to do it anyhow. And then lo and behold, something will happen and money shows up. And, you know, so I've had the opportunity to live in several different states. And it's not cheap to move, but I have to tell you, after spending time with my family last week, when I see them, I'm like a rock star. I walk in and everybody's excited to see me and what have you been up to and what kind of adventures have you been doing? And I never saw that before. So I think it's about having courage to just be who you are and just stepping out there, even if you don't see where the next step is going to lead you, but somehow it has always worked out. And I think it's all about trust.
When I turned, Lori, help me with this a little bit. When did I go to the Grand Canyon? Was that my 70th birthday? I think it was my 70th birthday. I went to the Grand Canyon and I went out on that skywalk. That was the glass skywalk, you know? And that was exactly the intention I had. I wanted to have a physical experience that represented what you just described. That even though it looked as though I was going to fall down into that canyon, I was being supported, even though I couldn't see it.
Right.
And what you just described is exactly the experience I've had.
Great.
Hi, Swaggy. This is Swaggy, everyone.
He's trying to tell me something.
So I think Dorothy, also what you said, I mean, just the words courage and trust really go hand in hand. And if you really want to be like, I have this bucket list, or, there's before I die, I want to blah, 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 whatever it is, when will a good time be? If we don't do it at this point, it's like so many people, we don't want to be in our deathbed and go, I should have, I could have, I wish I did. We don't want to have those regrets. We really want to step up and have that experience. And, once we do something that's outside our comfort zone, because we all have these comfort zones, but if we go a little bit outside of that, we can get that experience and then develop trust. We create trust. It's courageous to go a little bit beyond that. But once we have that trust built, we can go even further, and we can go further. And then all of a sudden we're all, skydiving and jumping out of planes and rappelling down mountains, and, we're just a whole
figuratively.
What?
Figuratively for me. But you know what? It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to rappel down my mountains that are figurative, really. And it does happen. Things change so much, you guys. Your perspective changes. You begin to see things that you thought were important that aren't. Everything changes. And it's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
So don't stop.
Don't
That's the
stop.
whole message. Don't stop. Just keep
Don't
going. And it's a natural progression and you'll be fine. Really.
I've also noticed with aging, getting a little older, I'm at the point now where I go, oh, well, I don't, if I don't care what people think of me anymore. I mean, it's not a big deal anymore. It's just not as big a deal. So I'm doing my life for me, not for pleasing others.
Just be careful that you don't make people wrong when they're in that stage of their life, because it's the natural place for them to be too.
I was there.
We had to go through those things in order to get to where we are. So, give them a little slack.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's such a good reminder for me, because I can see when I do, I don't care as much about what other people think. I still care what people think, but not as much.
Sure.
And I get frustrated. It's when my daughter cares so much what other people think.
Oh yeah.
So not making her wrong about that, because she's where she needs to be.
That's right.
Is such a good reminder. Thank you.
And that not making people wrong is really a good thing for you when you're aging, because what we're giving up is we're giving up the I'm better than you kind of place. And when you get older, you really begin to be much more egalitarian with everyone. I don't know how else to explain that, but a lot drops away, believe me. And yet those things were necessary for us when we were younger. So again, it's not better. It's just natural.
Right.
It's just natural, and it's all good. I loved my 50s. I loved my 60s. I've been happy in my 70s. I got kind of scared when I turned 78 to look at my 80s, but then I began processing it, and I've got old patterns. All the people I ever knew in their 80s were ancient.
Right.
And then they died,
Yeah.
But it's just going to be different for me, and I know it is.
I also want to say, turning 80
there. I'm sorry.
We get older a day at a time, not a year at a time. So it's a day-to-day thing, not oh my God, when I'm 80. Well, no, I still have to go through all these 365 days of being 78 and then 365 of being 79. We're not, you know what I mean?
It's called being in the now.
Being in the now.
And it actually comes as a natural ability in my life anyway. As I've aged, I don't have to try. I don't have to meditate. I don't have to do all those things I used to think I had to do. And now I'm really way more in the now. And if I get out of the now, I can get back into it much more easily. It's a beautiful time of life.
That's beautiful. That's good to know.
It's good to know, and really go for it. Just do everything you need to do now. Don't worry. You'll be fine as long as you're putting your foundation down, and you're doing that. If you're in your 50s, you're putting down a good foundation.
Right.
And it'll happen. It'll change. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing good. So I'm still in my 50s, and I'm still in that accumulation phase where, I've got a career, accumulating power, influence, wealth, and all that. And it is a little bit scary to look forward to think at some point I'm going to give that up. I'm not going to be defined by my career. I'm going to be defined by who I am. And that's going to be a very big shift. And I'm sort of curious, Laura, you just recently retired. You were a doctor. Did you feel any sense of loss giving that up, or?
Very short period of time I did. Because I did it kind of pretty gradually, as you may have watched, observed. But once I did, Kevin, for me, it took so little time to feel the freedom was so worth it all. And now, when I see people who were my patients and such, and I know they went to somebody else, I just go, great, I hope it's working great for you. And I don't have ego about that anymore, because I don't want to. I moved on. I'm so happy to have moved on from that. That's what worked for me. It's just, I'm not holding on to the past.
I think that's a wonderful description, because what I like to call that is that ego thins, kind of like my skin thins.
All right.
Thins.
Good thing. I like that term, ego thins. It does.
Yeah. Ego does thin. And that surprised the hell out of me when I discovered that. Yeah. It took me a while.
Yeah.
I got a lot of ego.
Well, I see that we only have a few more minutes left, so I'm wondering if anyone wants to make any comments, last minute, ahas, insights, questions.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I was thinking back, there was a woman, I had just gotten divorced, and I was, really going through my grieving period of losing my in-laws, and I love my in-laws probably more than I actually love my husband. But I asked this woman that was older than myself, she was probably 25 or 30 years older than me. And I said, Marilyn, do you have any advice for me? How can I let go of caring so much about what people think? Because I'm hearing a lot of gossip about myself that's not true. And she said, honey, when you get to be my age, she said, you are going to learn that you don't give a shit anymore. And she said, that is the best thing I can tell you, is just let it go in one ear and out the other, because it really doesn't matter. It's simply their opinion. And she said, I guarantee you, when you get to meet my age, you won't care anymore. And you know what? She's right.
Right.
That's
Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing? Isn't that a gift? It really is a
such
gift. Yeah.
I've never forgotten her advice.
That's great.
That was great advice. Well, so let me say, Sandy, any last minute words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
No, just keep on keeping on, everybody.
Well, I really want to thank everyone for joining, and Sandy, I know this is so much fun, and I'm really excited about these conversations. I want to say, join us next time. We're going to talk about decades. We're going to talk about what to expect in different decades.
Okay.
And that's going to be, I think it's September 4th. But we're going to try to do this every month. So anyone who's listening to this, if you want to lead one of these conversations one month and you have an idea of something you want to talk about, let's do it, because we need, we're missing out. One thing that Sandy said to me, and I'm gonna say it because I thought it was another wise thing, was that when we're in the world of Facebook, for example, we're commenting on things. We're not having conversations. And this is one of the ways we see that we can have conversations with each other. We can see each other, we can hear each other, and we can just really grow and learn as long as we keep an open mind and we have a commitment to grow. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the third trimester, is that we get to keep growing and learning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
What we want to grow and learn about.
Amen.
Right, exactly. All right.
It's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that too.
Thank you, Lori and Sandy. This has been fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Enlightening.
Good.
I loved it.
Yay.
Thank you for your time and pointers.
All right, you're welcome.
Anytime. I'm so happy to have done this. It's, I really means a lot. Lori, you're very talented. You know how much I love you. I'm so pleased you're my daughter-in-law. And here we go, let's just keep it up.
Right.
Congratulations,
Great.
Lori.
I love you too. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.